and we're going to begin with a live look inside the UK Parliament buildings for the big story this hour. Members of the 1922 committee you see right here, the Conservative backbench MPs who set the rules for leadership and have determined it's a 100-vote threshold for leadership contenders to be potential successors to Liz Truss. And we are just minutes away from finding out who the next Prime Minister of the UK will be. At the very least, we will know whether there will be a leadership race or a coronation. So we're looking again at the members of the 1922 committee, awaiting the announcement from the chair of the committee, Graham Brady. We're going to lead off our coverage outside 10 Downing Street with Abby Kugathasan, who is in position for whatever happens. You know, this is... I am just pausing because I'm getting some breaking news in my ear, Abby. The general public, because it's not an election, only sits back and watches what happened. And the breaking news is Penny Mordaunt is out. Rishi Sunak is in.
That's right, Heather. We are also just getting that alert on our phones. Everyone rushing to look at their phones in the last couple of seconds. Penny Mordaunt is out. Rishi Sunak, the former Chancellor, will be the next leader of the Tory party and the next British Prime Minister. We're waiting for that announcement to come in 15 minutes, but she has just posted on Twitter a short while ago saying that these are unprecedented times. Despite the compressed timetable for the leadership contest, it is clear that colleagues feel we need certainty today. They have taken this decision in good faith for the good of the country, and she's calling on everyone to unite behind Rishi Sunak. Earlier today, of course, we knew that Rishi Sunak had the support of more than half of Tory MPs. That was well beyond the 100 MPs he needed to get his name on the ballot. It seems that Penny Mordaunt perhaps didn't reach that number and is now dropped out of the race. So as we were talking earlier, whether it's either going to be a contest today or a coronation,
and it looks like the former
Chancellor.
I'm sorry, Abby, I don't mean to interrupt you. I don't mean to interrupt, but I want to hear the announcement live with you. So let's go inside that committee room and to Graham Brady.
Rishi Sunak is therefore elected as leader of the Conservative Party. And you may wish to know the new leader of the party will address us in this room at 2:30. Thank you.
2:30 is 9:30, so 9:30 Eastern. So that was the announcement. Rishi Sunak as the new party leader, by extension, the new Prime Minister. And just in as well, Abby, as I'll bring in Abby back again, Penny Mordaunt's statement that just went up on Twitter. Our party is our membership, whether we are elected representatives, activists, fundraisers, or supporters, we all have a stake in who our leader is. And then she goes on to talk about these are unprecedented times. Despite the compressed timetable for the leadership contest, it is clear that colleagues feel we need certainty today. They have taken this decision in good faith for the good of the country. And she goes on to say that I'm proud of the campaign we ran, grateful to all those across all sides of the party who gave me their backing, and she does mention that Rishi has my full support. So all of that just posted as well. You're right there. My goodness, it's been an extraordinary run for you outside 10 Downing. All sorts of breaking news as you stand in front of that door. But again, just come back to this breaking news that it is Rishi Sunak who has been acclaimed as the next party leader.
This was something that was being talked about in the recent hours as Penny Mordaunt was trying to edge closer and closer towards that 100 MP threshold, that magic number that she needed to be part of the race. But we were already hearing some of her own supporters, MPs that were actually backing her, saying that perhaps she should drop out for the sake of the party and for the sake of the country, to unite behind Rishi Sunak, as she now says that she will do, because this is a divided party, not just in the last 6 weeks under Liz Truss, but under the last 6 years. They've had 4 prime ministers in 6 years. Rishi Sunak will now be the 5th one. And of course, he will now inherit an an economy that's struggling. There's going to be a deeper recession in the United Kingdom here. That's a report that came out earlier today as well. And of course, a divided party, as I mentioned. We heard earlier this morning that the Brexit wing of the party wasn't even able to find consensus on who they wanted to support. And so, again, Rishi Sunak has the support of most of the MPs. We have to remember that that's exactly what happened in the leadership contest this past summer. But when they went to the party membership, those members chose Liz Truss, and that's what put her in number 10. Rishi Sunak, second time's the charm. He now becomes the first Brit of Asian descent to get the keys to number 10, the youngest prime minister in some 200 years here in the United Kingdom. And I do want to point out, he's a Hindu. It's Diwali, a festival of lights, an auspicious holiday, and certainly an auspicious day for him.
Abby, thank you for all of that. The breaking news, Abby Kugathasan outside number 10 in London. We want to bring you some immediate reaction to all of this. Aubrey Allegretti is with us this morning, political correspondent for The Guardian. He is live in London. Great to see you, Aubrey. The breaking news just in position for us. What just happened there in England?
Well, yes, there was a great deal of sort of frenzy leading up to the deadline of 2 o'clock in the UK, and the question as to whether or not Penny Mordaunt might be able to squeak over the line, turn it into a contest by getting 100 nominations from MPs. Obviously, she hasn't managed to do so, and she's blaming the fact that she thinks MPs need a more compressed timetable than the one that's already been agreed. So they wanted certainty today, get a new prime minister in post right away, so they've got maximum amount of time, because there is the sort of deadline, if you like, of a huge fiscal event that everyone's been looking forward to in a week's time on the 31st of October. So if this contest had been strung out until Friday, that might have put that in jeopardy, caused greater uncertainty amongst the markets, and further deepened the Conservatives' woes. So I think that's why we've seen her deciding to pull out today, and Rishi Sunak probably tomorrow going to the palace to meet the king and become the next prime minister.
So the pound seems to like it. The bond market seemed to like it, the return to a little bit more stability. But I'm wondering, as you study this about Rishi Sunak, whether he's the man for the job. I mean, we'll be following him and learning more about him, but he certainly had a supersonic rise in British politics, first elected in 2015, Chancellor of the Exchequer for Boris Johnson in 2020. He's only been 7 years as an MP. He really doesn't have a deep and diverse kind of portfolio. Is he the right leader right now, do you think?
He certainly feels like the right leader for the Conservative Party, because they want somebody who is going to kind of settle the jitters within the market and the city, make sure that there aren't any more financial woes, that gilt yield costs don't rise, that mortgage costs don't spiral even more. He is somebody who is known here in the UK and described negatively by his critics as somebody who personified Treasury orthodoxy, i.e. doing things in a sort of consistent manner that sort of kept things fairly smooth. Liz Truss obviously tried to be a bit of a disruptor. He will very much be the opposite of that. Now, the problem he's got is whether or not he can unite his party. And one member of parliament in the Conservative Party I was speaking to earlier sort of typified the problem with this. They said, my head is with Rishi Sunak, my heart is with Penny Mordaunt, and my soul is with Boris Johnson. So the fact that people are still so riven and couldn't decide who to back as leader, don't forget there were around a third of the parliamentary party who didn't endorse anyone for leader. That is going to really, really make Rishi Sunak's job over the next few weeks and months much more difficult.
You know, he said fixing the economy was his priority, but you've just touched upon a very interesting and key issue, is unifying the party. Reading some of the things that you've been talking about of late, the stakes for the Conservative Party, if they're not able to find someone around whom to coalesce. And it was interesting, you brought in a Canadian analogy, talking to a backbencher who said, you know, what happened to the progressive Conservatives in Canada? 1993 went from 156 to 2 seats in terms of being, you know, all but wiped out politically, federally. Is that what's really at stake here for this party at this time?
It absolutely is. The Conservative Party in the UK calls itself the sort of oldest and most successful political party in Europe. and they have a lot to maintain. They've obviously got a very big majority at the moment that was won for them by Boris Johnson, but they run the risk of falling into sort of third-party status at the next election. They've been hovering at around 20 points in the opinion polls, a disastrous collapse of around 30 points under Liz Truss's leadership. Obviously, Boris Johnson must take some partial blame as well. The polls have been sort of dire for him over the last year. They started turning against him in December and sort of were trickling downwards slowly until his removal in July. So this is not something that is purely Liz Truss's fault. But it's not just the popularity of the party that's at stake at the next general election. It's much longer term than that. This is a party that has always been trusted as the sort of economic stewards, and they have completely sort of put all of that into chaos and run the risk of essentially being consigned to the history books and not being able to make a comeback at the next general election, the one after that, or the one after that.
I'm wondering, in terms of the British public and the voting public, number one, how much you think his wealth, his personal wealth, is going to be a liability at a time when British citizens are being asked to make tough choices and face very difficult economic circumstances. And also, again, for that British voter, here's another British Prime Minister that they did not elect. How is that likely to play in all of this? Will he be forced into a general election in the not-too-distant future?
Well, there are some Conservative MPs who have already sought to pile pressure on him by suggesting they think he has no mandate to lead the country. I should hasten to add that those are very ardent supporters of Boris Johnson, so they had a stake in trying to point to his comeback as a way to sort of try and avoid the calls for a general election. However, of course, the way things work in this country is the Prime Minister has the gift of when to call such an election, and the next one doesn't have to be for another 2.5 years. So Rishi Sunak could well decide to wait all that amount of time, no matter what the sort of political or public pressure is. There will certainly be questions about his inordinate wealth. He's obviously married to one of the richest people in India as well. So I suspect that will play out very difficult for him electorally. And the opposition Labour Party here had been expecting for him to win the original leadership contest over the summer. So they have plenty of ammunition on him that they are more than happy and ready to deploy.
You're going to be in for an interesting ride ahead for sure as you continue to cover the political scene, but I'm interested in your looking back for us for just one moment. Again, one of the things you just wrote is that the end of the Truss era, the briefest tenure of any British Prime Minister in modern history, but you call it one of the most astonishing political weeks in UK history. How would you characterize the last, overall 6 weeks or the Truss days?
It's been very odd. Just an hour ago, I was taking a walk with somebody from Number 10 who was quite sort of bemused by the whole thing. I mean, there's a real bunker mentality that sets in. And as late as last week, they still thought they had a shot at her holding onto the job. But they said that when the time came and Liz Truss summoned Graham Brady to meet her last Thursday in Downing Street, she knew that the game was up and there were too many MPs that had turned against her. They wanted to avoid the embarrassment of her being dragged out kicking and screaming and instead go down with some kind of dignity. But they don't expect that she will hang around in frontline politics. They think she might just remain as a backbench MP till the next general election. But really, she's going to sort of clear off the scene pretty quickly. Now, where all this leaves the UK, it's just unbelievable, isn't it? I mean, we seem to be breaking record after record at the moment and not often in a very good way. So some stability and calmness, I think, will be welcomed by most people, particularly MPs. They just want to get on with their day jobs of actually kind of legislating and scrutinising legislation. But I don't really feel that the appetite is there enough for it to be too smooth and too sensible. There are too many voices frustrated at the ousting of Boris Johnson, now Liz Truss, who are going to make Rishi Sunak's life hell over the next 2 years. And I think they don't want to go down without a fight.
Looking forward to reading what you're writing about it. Thank you for giving us some time this morning just in response to that breaking news. Aubrey Allegretti, political correspondent for The Guardian. He's in London. And again, as you see just below Aubrey there on the screen, Rishi Sunak, now the leader of the Conservative Party, the Prime Minister of the country, the third in just 7 weeks.